And I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Russian Federation for convening this open debate on a topic of critical interest to all member states. And we welcome the adoption of the presidential statement coinciding with the UN Day. We thank the Secretary General for his insightful remarks. From Paul Antonio to Antonio Guterres, we hear the same message: for peace, justice, and humanity. In 1945, as humanity emerged from the darkest and most destructive war in history, it became clear that lasting peace required a fundamental shift in the conduct of international relations. The world could no longer be shaped by unilateral whims of a few powerful states. Instead, it had to be guided by universally accepted rules grounded in shared conviction that even the strongest must restrain themselves from acting solely at will, and that collective efforts undertaken in a spirit of cooperation are more effective and far greater than the sum of individual actions. It was this very recognition that nurtured the multilateral spirit and found institutional expression in the creation of the United Nations. The founders of this organization envisioned an international order rooted in peaceful coexistence, sovereign equality, collective security, justice, and human dignity. Yet today, the noble vision is being tested as seldom before. Over the past 8 decades, the United Nations has served as an indispensable pillar in advancing our shared aspirations for peace and security, human rights, and development. From enshrining the inalienable right of peoples to self-determination and supporting struggles against colonialism and foreign occupation, to affirming the dignity and worth of every individual, the UN has left an indelible imprint across virtually every dimension of international affairs. President, we are witnessing an era of deepening inequalities, erosion of international law, growing economic fragility, and rising mistrust among major powers. At the same time, climate threats, pandemics, cyber vulnerabilities, and the emergence of artificial intelligence and new technologies are reshaping the global landscape. Yet, multilateralism is under stress, when in fact international cooperation is most urgently needed to tackle the common challenges confronting humanity. In our interconnected world, if some are insecure, we will all be vulnerable. It was therefore gratifying to hear the ringing endorsement of multilateralism and support for the United Nations from the world leaders during the high-level week of the General Assembly last month. The best measure of our commitment to multilateralism is to strengthen the role of the UN. Pakistan firmly believes that the United Nations, as the most representative international organization and the quintessential expression of multilateralism, is the premier platform to address multifaceted global issues. We remain steadfastly committed to an international order governed by the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. These include the right to self-determination, sovereign equality, non-use of force, non-interference in internal affairs, territorial integrity, and the pacific settlement of disputes. These principles must be upheld universally and not subjected to political expediency or selectivity. Nowhere is selective application more glaring than in the denial of justice to the people of Palestine and Kashmir. The Jammu and Kashmir dispute, among the longest standing items on this Council's agenda, remains unresolved despite numerous Security Council resolutions guaranteeing the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination through a UN-supervised plebiscite. The Kashmiris rightfully look up to the international community, and particularly to this Council, to deliver what was promised to them over 7 decades ago. Let me remind that under Article 25 of the Charter, Member States are obliged to implement Security Council's decisions. Yet, their continued disregard erodes trust in the multilateral system. Similarly, the prolonged suffering of the Palestinian people remains a stark reminder of the urgent need for a just and lasting solution. Pakistan hopes that the two-state solution conference, complemented by the ongoing peace efforts led by the US and the Arab Islamic countries, will lead to a credible political process aimed at achieving an independent, viable, and contiguous state of Palestine, with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital, based on pre-1967 borders, in accordance with UN resolutions and international legitimacy. Mr. President, the UN Charter provides a full spectrum of peaceful dispute resolution tools under Chapter 6: negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, and judicial settlement. The adoption of Resolution 2788 on strengthening mechanisms for the peaceful settlement of disputes by the Council in July during Pakistan's presidency was a timely reiteration of our collective will and determination to pursue dialogue and diplomacy for pacific settlement of disputes in full conformity with the Charter and expectations of the international community. We must also strengthen the UN's peacekeeping and peace-building architectures. Pakistan takes pride in its contribution to UN peacekeeping over decades. Looking to the future, the United Nations must remain fit for purpose and accountable, as well as more representative. In this spirit, Pakistan underscores the following. First, Security Council must be reformed through an inclusive, democratic, and consensus-based process that expands elected representation, rejects new permanent privilege, and strengthens accountability to the wider membership. Today, nothing is more anachronistic than the individual permanent membership who pursue their own national interest, represent nobody, and are accountable to no one. The overwhelming majority of UN membership believes that this is the fundamental problem facing the Security Council. It would be disingenuous to suggest that instead of addressing this problem, we end up aggravating it by adding new individual permanent members. Those permanent members who seem open to expanding their exclusive club primarily in an effort to try to preserve their own outdated position of privilege must instead declare a commitment to genuine reform, abandon privilege, and be part of the democratic mainstream. The African model of regional representation, reflecting unity and regional consensus, on the other hand, is different from pursuit of power and privilege by some individual countries in other regions, and we therefore see that in a positive light. Second, as the most representative organ of the United Nations, the General Assembly must be empowered to assume a more decisive role in shaping global decision-making. Its resolutions and mandates must be fully respected and implemented, and its effectiveness and efficiency further strengthened to reflect the collective will of the international community. Third, the global financial and economic governance must be restructured on equitable, inclusive, and democratic foundations. We reiterate the urgent need to reform international financial institutions to ensure fair access to concessional financing, meaningful debt relief, and a more balanced allocation of SDRs. Lastly, the accelerating pace of scientific and technological innovation, particularly in artificial intelligence, presents both unprecedented opportunities and profound risks. It is imperative that international regulatory frameworks be established to ensure these technologies are harnessed for peaceful, ethical, and development-oriented purposes. They must not widen existing digital divides or exacerbate threats to global peace and security. President, in conclusion, the world order envisioned in the UN Charter must be reinforced through a stronger, more representative multilateral system that upholds justice, peace, and equitable development. As we mark 80 years of the UN, we must revive the spirit of San Francisco and make this organization truly fit for the future. Pakistan stands ready to work with all nations towards this shared objective. I thank you.